A better route. Chapter 76. Conan really wasn't sure about this plan. Kakashi-kun, is this really the only plan you can come up with? It just seems so risky. Kakashi knew it was risky, but it was the best he had. Don't worry, Conan-chan, it'll all be alright. You just go to the pipes and do what Kakashi told you to. He'll see you soon. Conan was still very skeptical, but he'd never let her down before. She headed out to go and put this crazy plan into motion. Itachi and Deidara had been going at one another in what must have been one of the difficult fights Deidara had ever been in. This Itachi guy was impossible to hit. There were times Deidara could have swore that he'd had one of his spider attached to him and the boy didn't even have a scratch on him when they blew up. From the start of the battle, he activated those strand eyes of his. Red with 3 Tomios inside of them. Deidara was tired of looking at those eyes. Getting some more clay from the pouch he was wearing, Deidara created 2 small centipede-like creatures. They crawled off of his body and towards Itachi. Once he was sure they were on his body, Deidara called to him, "I've got you this time, punk. You're going to feel the full wrath of my art." Itachi didn't seem like he was all that nervous about it. "You really shouldn't be so cocky. In the ninja world you never know how a fight's going to go." Deidara activated the centipedes which grew and Deidara watched as they coiled around Itachi. He snickered at him, "I think I've got all the reason in the world to be overconfident, asshole." Itachi had to stop himself from laughing. "We'll see." Deidara didn't know what that meant, but he wasn't going to pass up his opportunity to blow the crap out of this guy. Just as he raised his hand to detonate the clay, Zetsu joined the battle to stop him. "Honestly, Deidara, you may be powerful but you're dumb as a box of rocks. If you blow up that clay you're gonna be your own masterpiece." Deidara looked at Zetsu and then back at Itachi. The centipedes were no longer on him, had somehow gotten over and on to Deidara. He just looked at the lay around him and muttered, "How in the hell?" Zetsu sighed, "It was a genjutsu, you moron. It really is incredible. That would have been all it took to finish you off. Let's hope I don't have to do all of this myself." Zetsu placed his hands on the ground and roots began to come from the pipes and began to chase Itachi. Itachi couldn't believe he was seeing this kind of thing in action, the power of the first Hokage, but how? The roots grabbed him by the wrists and ankles and attempted to bind him. Itachi was forced to activate his Mangekyo Sharingan and used the Amaterasu to get the roots off of him. He began to make a break for it again and Zetsu was over, smirking to himself, "A chase, eh? Like you could run from us in here. This isn't gonna take 5 minutes. Come on, Deidara, we've got work to do." Jiraiya stood on top of Gamaken and waited for Pain to attack once again. He'd summoned some kind of dog that would multiply every time you got a good hit in on it. The dog jumped down, now with 4 heads, and gave a blood-chilling shrike. He was really hoping that Gamaken could handle all of this. Obito was honestly beginning to enjoy himself in this fight. He could only imagine that face the puppet master had on under his mask as he just stood there and didn't even bother to move. Sasori took another swing at Obito with the tail of his puppet armor only to watch it go right through him. It was really starting to aggravate him that Obito literally wasn't even trying. Figuring it was time to actually do something, Obito charged at Sasori and sent a fireball at the puppet master. Using his tail as a makeshift shield, Sasori did his best to defend himself. While his tail did stop the fireball, he didn't notice Obito had reached him and grabbed his armor by the leg. Picking the entire Akatsuki member in a rather impressive feat of strength, Obito slammed him back into the ground, completely destroying his armor. A young figure with red hair rose from the shattered pieces of the armor. That was uncalled for. "Do you know how long it takes to make one of those puppets?" Obito thought this guy looked kind of young to be the legendary Sasori of the Red Sand. "Aren't you supposed to be middle-aged right now?" Sasori shrugged, "Yes, I am. Let's just say I've found a way to keep myself in the best possible condition. Obito didn't really give a damn about that. I don't care how good a shape you're in, you're going to tell me where my son is if you want to live. Sasori pulled a scroll out and released something out of it. Obito tried to get a good look at whatever came out of the scroll and couldn't help but think it seemed a little familiar. It was a puppet, but it looked very similar to someone. He muttered to himself, I swear I've seen that somewhere. In an old picture or something. Sasori sent out some of his puppet wire and took control of the pupper. He was glad to see Obito recognize the puppet. This would be what I call a human puppet. I kill someone, clean out their bodies of whatever I don't need and turn them into one of my puppets. Not just any puppet though. These ones retain the user's bloodline, which I am then able to use. The little beauty I have here was once the third Kazekage. Before I left the hidden sand, I took it upon myself to take him along. Obito remembered where he'd seen him before. That's right. One of the greatest mysteries in the shinobi world, the third Kazekage's disappearance. I was so young when it happened, but it was big news even in our village. He just vanished without a trace and eventually they just assumed he was dead. Sasori began to toy with the puppet and small shards of iron began to flow out of its mouth. Let's see how you handle his legendary iron sand. Obito could see he was going to have to start taking this seriously. He needed to end this fast if he was going to go and help Jiraiya. It didn't worry him too much though, he had a plan already in his head. Itachi was really in the worst possible position right now. These pipes were so damn small and dark that he had almost no idea where in the hell he was going. He was completely boxed in. At first he thought he might have escaped, but he heard a voice coming from ahead of him, if you just give up now then we won't have to rough you up too much. Come on kid, let's just get this over with. The one ahead of him was Zetsu and Itachi could only assume that he'd used whatever jutsu that was letting him travel those walls. Deidara was no behind him as well. You can't escape from my art this time pretty boy. Itachi figured it was time for a genjutsu so he tried to link his chakra with Zetsu's and Deidara. It was incredibly easy to do it with Deidara but something went wrong when he tried to do it with Zetsu. His chakra network was some kind of jumbled mess, it was like he wasn't even human. He wasn't sure what was going on but it was clear that he didn't have time to figure out Zetsu's chakra network and it looked like Deidara was sending out some of his clay spiders. He'd have to go to plan B, so he went right into making hand seals and turned to the end Deidara was at. Putting his hand to his mouth, Itachi yelled, "Fireball jutsu." The fireball hit the clay spiders and they exploded. Unaware to Itachi, he'd hit a rather sensitive spot on the pipes. They started to shake and before long they were collapsing. It wasn't anything major for a ninja, he dodged any falling derby and braced for when the pipe hit whatever was below it. Sadly, Zetsu didn't have to prepare for anything as he could just make it so the derby just went through his body and the impact would have no effect. That gave him time to set up a little something special for Itachi. As soon as Itachi was about to stand up, he felt something twisted around his leg. It gave a hard jerk and he felt the bone in his leg snap. Screaming in pain, Itachi tried to stand back up but his leg just wasn't going to let him do it. He started to try and crawl away which caused Zetsu to tie him down with some roots. Zetsu went over to him and chuckled, "A little bit of luck but we're still the winners. Nighty night buddy." Zetsu slammed his head into the ground and knocked him out. Making sure that Itachi couldn't escape, he picked up Itachi and started to head for Tori. Deidara, who was still trying to stand up from the fall, screamed over, "Hey, wait for me asshole." Konan rushed into the room as quickly as she could. Tuhiya was still gone and wouldn't know about her activities. That was a crucial part of the plan if it was going to work. Kakashi leaned in and asked her, "Did you do it?" Konan rolled her eyes, "Would I be back here if I didn't?" Kakashi was about to apologize when Tuhia walked back in. Zetsu has captured Itachi. We should have him ready for you in a few minutes. Kakashi asked her, what kind of state is he in? Torai didn't see why that mattered but answered anyways. According to Zetsu his leg was broken and he was knocked out, but other than that he's fine. I still want you to kill him when you take his eyes though. Kakashi winced, you really shouldn't be so cruel. Torai didn't even respond to that. She just waited for Zetsu to finish up. Jiraiya was panting heavily. He was beginning to lose this fight and he'd even gone so far as to activate Sage Mode. Pain had somehow summoned 2 more people with the Rinnegan to fight along with him, which baffled Jiraiya as the only person he knew of with the Rinnegan was Nagato. One of them could absorb any ninjutsu he used, making this fight nearly impossible for him. It seemed like each of them could see what the others saw, which meant they could jump in and save each other before Jiraiya could do anything about it. He was really hoping this genjutsu Ma and Pa had told him about was as good as they said it was, or he wasn't sure what he was going to do. Kakashi did his best to act like nothing was wrong when Zetsu brought in Itachi. His leg was indeed broken, Kakashi could tell that much. Torai chuckled, not bad Zetsu. Looks like it's rather painful. Zetsu shrugged, he shouldn't have fought it so much. If he'd just come with me then I wouldn't have had to break his legs. Torai agreed, very true. You bring him over there while Kakashi gets himself ready. Zetsu placed Itachi on a nearby table and Kakashi walked over to it. He was really hoping this would all end okay. Torai told him, well, don't keep us waiting. Rip the eyes out of his head and end it already. Conan walked over and stood next to Kakashi. The boy took a deep breath and slammed his hands on to the ground. Roots began to flow through the ground and Tori yelled, "What are you?" Before she could finish there was some kind of explosion and the ground began to shake. The ground caved in under them, a large hole filled the center of the room. Torai looked down to see her grandson carrying Itachi and running through the pipes with Conan following. Torai had to control her shock at Kakashi betraying her. She jumped down and told Zetsu, "Come on, we can't let them get away." Zetsu was soon right next to her and said, "Okay, but she's the only person who knows these pipes better than we do. Looks like he used those roots to detonate a whole lot of paper bombs Conan placed all around these pipes. I'm gonna guess she organized them. Go give her and Kakashi the perfect escape route. I'm not sure we can catch them without it causing too much trouble." Torai began to shake in rage. "Fine, tell everyone to regroup and we'll decide what to do. I can't believe he'd do this.